put this out there and see what happens.
And this is mid, we had this idea at the start of 2013 when blogs were Instagram was nothing compared to what it is today. It was mostly Facebook pages. That's when you used to get reach on those. There was very few travel blogs. There was no courses. There was no courses on how to make courses. There was nothing, there was no Teachable and Skillshare. The idea of people selling courses on, or even ebooks on how to start a travel blog was just non-existent. There just wasn't the industry for it. There were very few travel bloggers. We like to say that we're in like the second wave of travel blogging. The OGs in the first wave are kind of like the 2010s, a little bit before that. They're your Jody, like Legal Nomads and Gary Arndt and some of those old school people, Nomadic Matt. And so in 2013, when we started, it was just, we actually started as an idea of, well, maybe we can get a free hostel stay, like a $5 dorm stay when we're in Nicaragua, or maybe we can review a tour or something like that. And just, yeah, it kind of built out a necessity as well, thinking we're both from different parts of the world. How are we going to make this work? What are we going to do? So it was sort of in the back of our mind. It wasn't really like a full-on career idea until probably the end of 2015, I'd say. Don't you think?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that's interesting. And so what part of your travel business took off first? Was there anything specific that you realized people really were taking to?
I'd say the end of 2015. So we just finished up 7 months in the Philippines. We did another 6 months working in a disaster relief organization in Tacloban, which is the city that was hit the hardest by the super typhoon in the Philippines in 2013. Oh, shit, I got my years wrong. And so we spent 6 months there, and we were juggling a lot of things. We were sort of travel blogging. We were doing that. We were also getting our masters. Both of us got our masters a couple of years ago in international development. And the travel blog was like, are we going to keep doing this, or we're not going to keep doing it? And then we decided, there was a travel blogging conference in Bangkok at the end of 2015. And we were like thinking about, should we go? Should we not go? We'd never done any kind of networking with other travel bloggers. We'd never done any kind of professional development or anything. So we just thought, all right, bite the bullet. Let's do it. Let's get back to Thailand. We'll go there. We went to this conference, and suddenly we started learning that, about affiliates. You can put affiliate links in your blog and you can make money that way. And you can partner with brands, which we'd done on a small scale, but not massively. And then just a whole bunch of different things sort of started clicking. And I think that one of the biggest things for us was upping our writing skills and probably upping our photography, which made our content creation sort of more desirable, I guess, for brands. And that was some of our, that was some of our bigger things. So working in partnerships with brands was probably our first sort of big start, I guess, in working on it full time.
And I think when we started focusing on sustainability and eco travel, it was something that we weren't really focusing on before, but coming from a nonprofit background and an international development background, it was something that we were just really passionate about. And when we kind of married that with the travel, it sort of was like, oh, this makes sense. Like, this is our niche that we need to focus on. And when we niched down, it really took off after that. Tourism boards that want to focus on eco destinations were reaching out to us, travel brands that give back, things like that, sustainable travel gear. That I feel like was a turning point when we started able to make it more into a career.
Yeah, because we were already writing about that stuff. We just hadn't called it responsible tourism. Like those weren't even really buzzwords back then. People weren't saying ecotourism. Like eco, yes, but not so much sustainability and responsible tourism like they use now. So we were already writing about how to, find local experiences and how to be a good traveler, so to speak. But we just weren't putting it in the framework of sustainable travel. And so after we finished at this conference, we realized we needed to niche down and focus on that, because we were just writing about budget backpacking and authentic travel. And we're like, no, let's make a specific focus on sustainability. And yeah, as Christine said, that was a big step for us.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it is sustainable travel, ecotourism are two massive buzzwords that have kind of hit their peak, maybe not even their peak yet, but still really important to a large mass of people, especially folks in our generation that are very cognizant of climate change, very cognizant of cultural impact while traveling, and the white savior.
Mm. Yeah, it's been an interesting past few years. We don't volunteer or work in nonprofits anymore, but that was how we started traveling, basically. And kind of right after we stopped doing that, the idea of the negative effects of voluntourism became like there was more light on that. And so we kind of had to look back on some of our previous experiences and be like, okay, was this actually benefiting the local community? And then, yeah, we both got our masters in international development. And then we were like, okay, maybe this isn't really the route we want to be going down with the voluntourism. So,
So, can you, Elliot? You said the white saviors, and this is something that I'm still learning about. Can you explain what that actually means?
Essentially, it's the sort of Western ethnocentric view that you can be the one that can provide the answer and the solution to somebody else's problem, which has a vastly different complex cultural understanding of how they approach problem solving. So that's like a so that's kind of like the big sort of explanation. But the biggest one is just you thinking that you know better than the locals. They're like that's a more simplistic view. And so, voluntourism over the last few years has become a huge buzzword. I would to defend ourselves a little bit, even though there are things, as Christine said, that we look back. Most of our stints were working usually for 6 months in
mhm.
organizations. So like long-term community development, not doing like working in an orphanage for 2 weeks or, patting elephants and for a week. So a lot of the work that we were doing which was alongside our masters in international development was working with community groups, doing the long, boring stuff that people don't want to do, the surveying of communities, working out how to strengthen local community groups, like institutional strengthening, financial literacy, business management training, things like that to help groups better themselves, like providing tools to those groups. But a lot of the volunteerism things they're flashy photo like opportunities that people can go and get a picture helping some kid in Africa, and post it on their Instagram. And so, that's the negative side that has got a lot of slack over the last couple of years, and I think rightly so. Um, and there's been a lot of, unfortunately, it's an education. It's not the people, and we're very much about trying to educate people as opposed to pointing the fingers. And unfortunately, it's the middlemen of these organizations that have really capitalized on volunteerism, as opposed to a bunch of people out there trying to be shitty and do the wrong thing. So it's really just about educating people as to the negative effects that volunteerism projects can have on communities, as opposed to shaming them for it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you made. It's because a lot of the people, even if they are, the classic example is the white family or the white couple that goes and they go to Africa and they say that they're building a well or something, and you go to their Instagram page and it's all selfies with the African kids in the background, and that's what's has gotten flack over the years, and rightfully so. But I I think that in the anger towards that process, it's being taken out on the woman or the man who has the picture and took the picture when it's not necessarily their fault because their intentions are pure most of the time. And so I think there's two ways to it's not just educating the person on researching the right organization to go with, but it's also educating the people who are coming down on those people for making mistakes too. Does that make sense? There's a
Yeah,
lot of work to be done in this area. It seems like, but
unfortunately, a lot of people also, there's kind of a catch-22 between these projects that Western countries or whoever, let's just say, developed countries helping developing countries, is that you get yourself in this situation where uh, a family wants to come down to Mexico and build a school. Okay, it costs $10,000 to build a school. their trip also cost $10,000. So you could say that if they didn't go down to the school to build the school, because let's be honest, they probably can't build a school. They have, the resources would be better used for local labor to provide jobs. So instead of them coming down and spending $10,000 to build the school, they would just donate their 10,000 and two schools would be built. But the problem is that if those people don't have those experiences, if they don't have the opportunity to come down and build that one school, they're probably not going to donate any money, and there'll be no school. So you kind of get caught between the situation where, is it better to have no schools and that family doesn't go down there, but they've learned the lesson of supporting a community differently, or is it better to have one school? Because people want to be a part of these experiences, and they want to provide, and it's these tangible experiences that help inspire them to provide support for future generations. And maybe they tell their friends who then donate. But without those tangible experiences, without the selfies, without those sort of not egotistical, but kind of like those opportunities to show what they're doing, there might be no school. So it is like there are situations there, and that same thing can apply to the family going and building the well. What's better, one well, no wells, two wells? Like it is a little bit of a tricky situation at times. I feel like it's a bit of a juggling act.
That's really good points. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really sad situation because it is people with great intentions who have extra resources who want to provide that to a community that doesn't have those resources. And there are communities around the world that do need those resources, the wells or the schools or whatever. But for some reason, development is so complicated and so tricky. And it's not even just at the grassroots, like voluntourism level,
Right.
like up to USAID and those
World
really
Vision,
large
Salvation Army.
global
Yeah.
NGOs. They're extremely problematic as well. I don't want to, name and shame or whatever, but it's just a very complicated system with development. So it's really too bad that we can't pair those people who have resources and the people who need resources in some sort of mutually beneficial way that makes everybody feel good and has lasting sustainable change. But it is really problematic because these people do want to actually travel and be there for those moments where they're breaking ground on the well or breaking ground on the school and have that feel good moment. And that's part of the reason they're donating the money. Whereas if they just stay at home, they're going to spend their money, on something else. So it's just a really tricky situation. But as you were saying, like people, keyboard warriors, they love to shame people and they love to judge. So as Jules was saying, like our education, like we're just all about education rather than shaming.
Yeah, that's that's. I have an issue. I have an issue with the shaming. I with the approach. Do you know the page No White Saviors?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I like their message. I hate their methods.
Mm.
I know they're kind of a controversial page, but I want to reach out to them and say, hey, like I get what you're saying, and I understand the approach that you're trying to take, and you're trying to make sure that these populations or these villages aren't being exploited the way they are, and they're right most of the time, but it's such an angry like when you bring confrontation to a situation, you're going to be met with confrontation. And I think that if they were to approach it, and if they ever hear this, they're probably gonna they have their reasons for maybe their methods. But if you embrace the person that you think is in the wrong in a way where you're offering solution to them and saying, hey, I understand you're trying to make a difference. Why don't you try to make it this way? Because based on the knowledge I have on the ground, this is the best way to do it. It's automatically bashing. And I just don't know.
It's kind of a catch-22 because if they're not loud and controversial, a lot of people won't listen. But when they
True.
are loud and
Right.
controversial and seemingly angry, it alienates people and people shut off and they're like, I'm not even going to listen to what you're saying anyway. So it is definitely a difficult balance. I would
That's a
not
good
want to
point.
be in their shoes to,
Yeah.
try that out.